Hello, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you, Joshua, for the introduction. I really appreciate it. And I'm about to turn on some subtitles. Let me ask you, is there anyone who needs subtitles? Because it's asking me. Tell me if it gets in the way, but it's something that I have the option to, so I like to increase accessibility if possible. Or if somebody is currently listening to this on mute, that might be a possibility. So anyway, y'all, first of all, thank you. My name is Katrina Coker, AKA the Scrum Mother. And this presentation is introducing you to my world and the words of wisdom of how to get experience as a Scrum Master without being a Scrum Master. And actually wanted to give a shout out to everyone who's here, who learned about this on TikTok and Instagram, who follows me under the Scrum Mother. But in general, to everyone, I always like to start my presentations with a formal thank you, because you could be anywhere else on your Monday evening and you're here with us and here with this content. And also for those of you who might have been in my last presentation on the same topic for the DC Lean Agile meetup, it is the same topic and pretty much the foundation, but just adding a little bit more personal touch to it to make it a little bit more practical and relatable so that you know what you can walk away with. Just a brief introduction just about myself is, yes, I am the Scrum Mother. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and I also post the same videos on LinkedIn. So if you're not really a social media person, but you want to keep it professional, I do post my videos on that as well. And I can always tell you the story later, but the Scrum Mother is actually a term of endearment that a former teammate gave me. But always feel free to follow me, like, comment, tag, share about this presentation as much as possible. I am originally from Georgia, and I did a 5-year stint in Dallas, Texas, a 3-year stint in Virginia, and I'm now back in Georgia, where I graduated from Kennesaw State University. So I am back here in the area. I live in Beaufort, Sugar Hill. And it's actually funny because I don't normally present in Georgia, so y'all actually know where these places are. So I have my master's and my bachelor's from Kennesaw State University. And I'll tell you about my Agile journey in just a moment, but I will say just a few fun facts about me is that food is my favorite food. So you can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Table Booth or Bar, where I'm always posting videos or pictures about the food and sometimes even the restrooms. Also, as you might notice here, I will be probably getting a new headshot soon, but don't get used to it because I change my hair on a regular basis. I currently have pink and purple in my hair at the moment. So that's why some people can't always find me because I look different. But that's just a fun facts about myself. And going over what you're actually here for is the agenda. I'll just give you a brief intro about my Agile journey, talk to you about my life as a Scrum Master from my perspective, getting experience as a Scrum Master with formal training and informal training, when you might not want to be a Scrum Master. We'll finish it up with some Q&A. But I just want to set the tone, the expectation that I will not be going through Agile Scrum 101, nor the non-Scrum roles, non-Scrum Master roles, such as product owner, business analyst. This is purely going to be about the Scrum Master perspective. Though I'm always open to these questions, I actually have background in business analyst and product owner as well. But my objective is for you to walk away with at least one thing you can change or work on tonight, walking out of this to get experience as a Scrum Master without being a Scrum Master. And then overall goal is for this to be one of the most productive presentations of your day. And at the end, if you have not walked away with at least one thing you can change or work on tonight, either I'm not doing my job or you're not listening. So always open to feedback at the end though. All right, any questions or concerns about this? Okay, I will do my best to look at the chat, but like Joshua had said, when we're in presentation mode, it can be a little difficult to follow the chat. So but I will promise I will come back to it at the end. we will either answer it verbally during the Q&A or I'll type in the chat. Okay. All right, so just my Agile journey. So I have a master's in conflict management and a bachelor's in international business with emphasis in marketing and Spanish. But I didn't really find my place in this Agile world until 2016. I will say I went to my first Agile 101 course in about 2010, which is what I was telling Joshua earlier, but I didn't get a formal role until 2016, where I worked for an Agile consulting company. I got trained as a Scrum Master and a product owner there, which that was actually a very unique perspective, and I think helps me be even better at Agile because I've seen it practice in multiple companies, but also I worked very closely with the C-suite at the time. I worked with the chief operations officer, so I got to see how the C-suite and leaders actually view Agile, and also as a Scrum Master, how to talk to them. So that was very helpful. And then I pursued a fully dedicated product owner role, which is key. I was pursuing a product owner role, got hired at Equifax to do that, and shortly after worked as a Scrum Master at the same time. Actually did not want to be a Scrum Master and was very actively asking them when they were going to hire a Scrum Master. But I actually happened to be really good at it, and I tended to like it. Other people within my company were asking me to be their Scrum Master. People outside my company were asking me, what do you do as a Scrum Master? And other people were doing it wrong. And I would say, no, 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 that's not how you do it. Then finally one day it was like, oh, okay, I think I'm a Scrum Master. So then I decided to pursue a fully dedicated Scrum Master role, which is where I'm actually at my current company, Cvent, right now. I started as a Scrum Master too, and then back in December, I got promoted to a senior Scrum Master. So about a year ago. So I love working for Cvent. The context now is that I tell people I'm kind of the Scrum Master now for 5-ish teams, 3 for sure. One is then another one that's a contract team that has their own contract Scrum Master that I have to know what they're doing and how it impacts the other teams and what my other teams are doing and how it impacts them. And then I have a 5th quality team that their manager kind of serves as their Scrum Master. But again, I have to know what they're doing and how it impacts everyone else and how everyone else impacts them. So I say kind of 3 teams plus 2 halves. And so that is my context. Also, all of my teams are in the same product line. There are some Scrum Masters who have multiple teams, maybe even only 2 teams in different product lines. I personally don't know how they could do it because it is hard with multiple teams, but it's easier for me because they are all in the same product line. Okay. All right, so my company, Cvent, loves when we get out into the community, and actually our goals are to increase our sphere of influence. But I will add this tidbit that the following information is my experience and not necessarily industry standard, nor the opinions of the companies that I worked for. But I will say Cvent did give their check off reviewing my presentation. So they may not present the same thing, but they want to advocate for us as employees. Okay. Also, I will say, if you are trying to get a role as a Scrum Master, we do have a few Scrum Master 1 roles available. Okay, so please take note of my information. Feel free to apply online for the Scrum Master roles at Cvent Careers. And then also feel free to email me your resume. I don't make any promises, but I will do what I can. And I told them that I would forward them any resumes to people that were interested. Okay. All right, so before I talk to you about how to get experience as a Scrum Master, I want to give you my elevator speech as to what a Scrum Master life is like, okay? So this is, hands down, this is my thing, is that I believe that there are 2 key pieces to being a successful Scrum Master. You can call them traits, you can call them qualities, but I would say to be a successful Scrum Master separates into 2 pieces: operations and compassion. Okay, now overall, I guess this is where coming from the Agile consultancy company higher level comes. I'm not pro Kanban, I'm not pro Scrum, I'm not pro team, I'm not pro individual. I am pro, we are all here to get a job done. Our whole goal is to get a product out the door that people want and need. It is cool to do cool things, but if no one's paying us to do those things, it is not valuable, right? So the Scrum Master's whole job is to make sure that whatever we are doing, and honestly, whoever is involved, is bringing us all value. That's from the ceremonies that we have, from the people involved in those ceremonies. We want everything that we do to be valuable. And I say time, talents, and treasures, right? We want to make sure we're spending it wisely. And so as a Scrum Master, we are the subject matter expert of the Scrum methodology, a coach, a master problem solver. But I would say we're the get shit done people, right? We cannot have operations without compassion, and we cannot have compassion without operations. So I say we keep the people in project management. I think that's the only thing that separates Agile, is that we just make sure that we get things done, but that people are not cogs in a system, right? People are not resources, people are people. I will send this out at the end so we can dive into this deeper, but that's my elevator speech. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so going into, all right, somebody came off mute, you have a question? Okay, so going into, that's my elevator speech, right? Compassion, operations, bringing value, making sure we have a healthy system. So everything that I think about how you can get experience as a Scrum Master kind of relates to that. Okay, so that's just setting the tone. I have broken it down. I feel like there are two ways to get experience as a Scrum Master: formal and informal training. I will tell you, I'm going to kind of breeze through the formal training because I want to really dive into the informal training and the pieces and the practical things that you can do today. So in terms of the formal training, first of all, thank you. You're here. You're already doing it. How many people I meet who say, hey, I'm looking to be a Scrum Master. Okay, what organizations are you part of? What meetups do you go? Right? And the amount of people who say, well, I don't know how to find them. I will be very patient when I say this. If I can find them, then you can find them. A Scrum Master is to be very resourceful, but that's also where Joshua and I are here to help these events take place and to make sure that you do know where you can get the information that you need. Okay, so Scrum Alliance, Agile Alliance, Improving, these meetups, you can pay for training. So to get your certification as a Scrum Master, professional Scrum Master is another option. There's also skilled Agile Framework Scrum Master trainings, right? So you can pay for them, but there's also so many places that you can come get a continuous education for free, such as this meetup that you were attending. Thank you. They are happening all over the world, multiple times a day. So make yourself aware of them. And again, you can actually find them on the Scrum Alliance and Agile Alliance's website as well. There's free webinars. There's things you can go to. Okay. And then actually, I want to give a plug here. Glenn Gordon is generally, as Josh said, the host of this. Improving, he's going to try to get us a discount code for some improving classes. And Joshua, do you have the information for that?
I do, actually. I was going to do it at the end of the presentation, but we do have, it's called ATL Scrum, and I'll show it at the end of the presentation, the slide. But we do have a full slate of training across the spectrum of all the dimensions within Scrum that you can do. So that supplements the conversation that Katrina's having here.
Okay, awesome. So be on the lookout for that. And again, and I will say before I go into this informal training, as much as you can, get that certification, get the certifications. I will tell you, you do not necessarily need that to get a Scrum Master role. I will tell you, it will put your resume above others who do not. So it is helpful. Okay. Now, some companies will pay for you to get your certification. I wouldn't bank on that. That's just personal opinion. Just especially with working with people who don't have a certification, it is more difficult. But no matter what, it's so important to make personal connections, because basically within this Agile community, it's all about people. And that is why it is so important to get a mentor, reach out to people. If you loved what Josh had to say, reach out to Josh. I'm volunteering him, but when you find somebody that you like their content, thank you for the people who, I think Valeria is actually following from Italy, because she follows me on TikTok. So she follows up. I just met someone the other day who she followed me on LinkedIn. She reached out to me and asked. I mean, that's the worst thing that can happen is somebody's not available, right? But take the initiative. Scrum Masters have to be resourceful and be able to ask what you want, honestly. So thank you. That's, I'm gonna leave that there. And I will, again, we'll send this presentation out. At the end of the presentation, I actually have other resources, so you can check those there. Okay. Anybody have any question right now about formal training? Okay.
Katrina, this is
Go ahead.
Keisha. I have a question about formal training on tools, and maybe that'll be for later, like
okay.
Jira or other tool related items.
Okay, that is actually an excellent question. I am not a tool specialist, but I have taken some trainings on LinkedIn Learning regarding Jira and even Trello, Linkit type stuff. Josh, do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that the LinkedIn platform is fantastic for that. To be sincere, if it's a question about Keisha, about what tools preferred or what have you, I tend to figure in our line of work, we go in and whatever's available, we tend to take on to use. So if your company has sort of something specific that it uses, all of them have slightly different flavors based on how people approach things. But there's so many resources. LinkedIn Learning is fantastic for that. I've used it many a times to do it, and on demonstrations as well too. Many of these companies, they'll give you the opportunity to actually demo their tools for a period of time. So if you know you're getting into something with it, and it's a great way to meet the reps with those tools as well too. And that gets you sort of into what's coming up and what's going on, and they'll be happy to go over those pieces with you, because anyone who can become an advocate of the tools that are being used or what you're using is a net positive for them. So that's traditionally the approach I take.
So Keisha, let me actually clarify his question. So he asked a question. Are you asking about where do you learn about Agile tools, or is there a specific tool that you want to learn about?
I guess Jira is the specific one, but to Joshua's point, depending upon the organization, I know they use different tools, but Jira is the one that I wanted to start with. I know there's some Udemy courses, but I just didn't know if there was like a preferred way to go about learning about the tools and getting acclimated.
So that's a good question. And I also, when people are interviewing for a company, even from your first interview, that is actually one of the questions I would ask is what tool do you use to manage your backlog? And then see what you can do to learn up on that tool. But Jira I have seen as one of the most used.
Katrina, if you don't mind me adding this as well too, is a lot of the tools, especially like if you're using Azure DevOps or something like that, a lot of it is connectivity to the infrastructure or the applications or the databases that are being built as well too. So when these, I know that Jira, for example, Keisha, tends to be a lot more technical. But again, this, you know, anything that we're doing with these tools or whatever, and I think Katrina would agree with me here, the principles stay the same. I mean, I've gone into environments where no tool has been selected. We throw these things up on a whiteboard and just move Post-its around.
Yeah.
So again, the tenets of what we're doing is so important that when you get into the application tool set, dare I say, knowing a few of them is probably better for you too, because then you can make, if they haven't decided something yet, you can make advocacy on why some tools are better than others based on sort of the technical requirements that they need.
Yeah. All right. And then also Jacob posted in the chat because that LinkedIn Learning used to be called lynda.com. So take a look at this chat, his comment on there, if you have any questions about that. But that's a good, go ahead.
I have one good source to learn Jira. Is it okay?
Okay, if you could post it in the chat, that would actually be great for everybody.
There you go.
Okay, thank you so much. And then also some additional sources from a formal training from literature that you're going to want to know about. Anyone and everyone want to be involved with Scrum need to know the Scrum Guide. And I also recommend, because it was just changed, know what the original one said versus what's the 2021 say. Oh, is it Nadad? Is it Nadad? How do you pronounce it?
Nenad.
Netted. Yes. Okay. So he's got it right in front of him. So yeah, if you come to me,
Just
if I'm
pointed
gonna,
out.
thank you. So if you come to me and you're expressing that you automatically know you want to be a Scrum Master and you've never heard of the Scrum Guide before, I'm probably going to be a little concerned. But I also, at least if you come to me and I ask you to read that, then my suggestion is to take a look at it. Okay. And then in addition to that, the Agile Manifesto with the principles of Agile. I can tell you, I have been asked about that in an interview. Somebody has asked me, what is my favorite principle? So I suggest, just like Ned had said, to have it in front of you and understand where Agile's coming from. And to that point, the Scrum principles as well, be aware of them, and even Kanban principles, at least the basics, right? But you can always find that scrum.org also has a recommended reading list specifically for Scrum Masters, and then Agile blogs. I have them here, and then we'll send them out at the end of this. Some blogs and podcasts. I post some that I'm interested in and that I follow, but there's no special preference. There's a lot out there. Okay, so now that's getting to the guts and the glory of the presentation. Actually, I want to say it's so amazing to come to these things, because even while y'all were talking at the beginning, I thought of some other things that I would add to this presentation, right? That I am, I consider myself an experienced Scrum Master, and I'm still learning things every day about tools, about ways of working, and still making those personal connections. All right, but I will say for this presentation, and I have come up with 10 things or 10 tips of how to get informal training of being a Scrum Master without having experience as a Scrum Master. Okay, so my goal is that you can remember at least one of these. These are the parts where I would say, aside from the formal training, that you can walk away going, okay, either I'm already doing that, or, oh, I could be doing this, or, oh, I don't want to do that, right? And then we can talk about that. All right, so number one, these are the things that are super easy and not everybody likes to do them. Have an agenda, okay? Scrum Masters, it's for 2 reasons. Because you want to walk, as we talk about value. Every meeting you go into, we want to know who's going to be there, why they have to be there, and what we're going to be talking about. I don't care, from my perspective, I don't care if the meeting's 5 minutes. If I'm using somebody's time, I want to know what I'm asked. What is my ask of them? And I often will ask, what is your ask of me, right? What is my action item? What do I need to do? I actually just had that with some other Scrum Masters. We're meeting on an internal initiative, and other Scrum Masters were actually bowing out of this initiative. And I said, I mean, I'm not going to bow out, but I don't really understand what you need me to do right now, right? So what is your ask of me? But anytime you have a meeting, whether it's honestly with your kid's school, with your job, whatever it is, set an agenda, an itinerary, right? The key takeaway from that is you always walk into a meeting with at least the desired outcome of that meeting. And best to know what content will be presented and who's presenting it, what's in scope versus out of scope, right? Now, I won't toot my own horn, but I let you know what I was going to be talking about, but I also let you know what I was not going to be talking about, setting some expectations, right? And what is the objective and outcome that we're trying to do. I will tell you, many years ago, I actually was part of a church retreat where I was facilitating a lot of different meetings going on at the same time, and I had to do an itinerary minute by minute. It was grueling, but I actually loved it, and it's actually the thing that set me up for this path. Because when I was telling somebody recently who was involved with that, what I do as a Scrum Master, they're like, oh, do you remember when you did this thing? Yes, even minute by minute. I did that. I've done that with multiple events, personal events. Right? You think something's going to take 30 minutes. Somebody else thinks it's going to take 50 minutes. Okay, how about we do this minute by minute? All right. And the thing that I get pushed back on a lot, who's going to be the note taker? Who's going to be the one to take minutes of a meeting? Y'all, this tends to fall to the woman in the room. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, we don't want to do that anymore. If you're the one who's guilty. No, if you are anyone coming to me want to be a Scrum Master, you better start taking notes now. And what it does is, one, it documents, right? We have to document things. It helps us read between the lines. And I have a joke of Hamilton reference here, to be in the room where it happens. Okay? Be the first one to show up, be the last one to lead, take the notes, and you can ask clarification, because it helps know what we're going to talk about. It helps know what did we talk about and who's supposed to do what. Because as a Scrum Master, we're supposed to remove blockers and impediments. And if we don't know what somebody else is supposed to do, we can't follow up with them. Okay? And it helps track patterns. It's a skill, no matter what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you, I don't always want to be the minute taker in the meeting either, but I'm usually taking notes either way. Right. So if you are someone who tends to defer to somebody else for that, it's something you can do today. You could be doing that now for Joshua if anyone would like to.
You know, Katrina, that brings up a really great point. Have you ever made it so that, depending on if it's a large meeting, ever distribute that responsibility, so that if you go into it, that you might have to facilitate multiple people in a conversation and somebody else is doing it as well too? You know, for smaller teams, it's probably easy to do both, but is there any sort of tips to, if it's a larger group or distributed, how to participate in that?
That's actually an excellent question. And ironically, I was doing this one, 3 teams. It was only 3 teams, not 4, where I was doing a retrospective over our ceremonies. We were in 3 plus locations, because we were in our Dallas office, we were in our HQ office, and then we had our remote employees wherever they were at, right? So 2 plus activity. And I had an agenda of what each team was going to do, but I could not be at each team to take their notes, right? So I asked, part of the instructions was for each team to come up with a spokesperson, each team to come up with a minute taker, each team to come up with who was going to keep time, right? Which are all things Scrum Masters do, but can't do it all in multiple meetings at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
It is a great question. Okay. 3, I talk all day long. I have to talk to people I've never met before, and I have to present, especially now with Zoom, right? I'm actually on meetings the majority of the day, which is why I tell people I don't have to be in person, because I was on meetings all day online on my computer with my team in the same row as me. And oftentimes we were slacking each other. But if you want to get comfortable with being a Scrum Master and you are not comfortable with public speaking, then I'm going to give you some tips of what you can do. First of all, there's an organization called Toastmasters. I have been a member of it. And I say this vulnerably, that I have not been diagnosed with dyslexia, but I often mix up my words. Usually when I'm dealing with anxiety, I say I have verbal dyslexia. One time I was meeting a guy named Cal, and I said, "Hi, Katrina, I'm Cal," right? They thought I was being funny. I was not being funny. I started going to Toastmasters because there's some spontaneous speaking. I do really well when I prepared, right? And so that's something that I was uncomfortable with. So I started going to Toastmasters for that reason. Also, I saw myself doing stuff like this, where I wanted to be able to be a better public speaker. And I often wanted just more experience speaking on the go. You can do prepared speeches or you can do spontaneous speeches, but that is an organization. There are other public speaking ones. That's just one I have experience with. But also these days, there's other ways. Podcast, that's where you don't have to be seen, but you can get practice speaking. Anytime, you've got a Facebook Live, Instagram Live, TikTok Live, it doesn't have to be a formal business thing. You can just get experience putting yourself out there. Go on Facebook Live at an event you're at for 5 minutes, right? You can ask to take questions. Nowadays, I was just on Instagram Live through my Scrum Mother account. I was able to pull somebody into the meeting. That was interesting. But either way, those are some things. We talk to people all day long, y'all, all day long. And I say we're essentially the professional MCs, right? And facilitation. So if you are in a dialogue at work, personal, and you're facilitating like, hey, what do you think? Hey, what do you think? And you're getting practice speaking to people that maybe you don't know, but you're also practicing those facilitation skills. All right, so going into speaking, not just people that we don't know. Sometimes and a lot of times we have to speak to people at all levels of an organization, even up to the C-suite. That can make people very uncomfortable. Some people actually, some Scrum Masters actually feel more comfortable working with their team, but not necessarily outside the team. It's honestly what the company wants from you. I have to invite a lot of people to meetings. I have to, sometimes I have to escalate concerns. And sometimes I have the C-suite senior leadership role come back to me and ask me questions about something that the team's doing, right? So I have to be comfortable doing that. So get comfortable talking to people at all levels in organization. If you want to talk about a skill, have your elevator speech ready. What are you doing? What's your name? Where are you from? I hate surface level talk, right? Small talk. I hate it, but it's a way to get started and meet strangers. If you want to, people hate talking in the elevators, but someone on the street, someone you don't know, hey, how are you doing? I'm so-and-so, this is what my job is. So if talking to persons from levels above your pay grade makes you uncomfortable, I would also seek out a mentor at that level, right? I told you before, I had the unique opportunity to work with the chief operating officer at a company I used to work for. It was a unique experience, right? So no matter, especially if the person is at a different higher level per se, it will get you additional training, more experience, but it also, again, will help you get comfortable with that. And then, of course, I like to plug this, that job titles do matter, right? They do matter, and we just need to be comfortable with all of them. But stakeholders, users, buyers, they're people too, right? They're just people too. So just remember that if that helps you be more comfortable. All right, so what stakeholders often want to talk about is the roadmap. What is our vision? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? This often falls within the product owner's realm, right? Or the product field. What are we building? Why is it important? What does the customer want? How does it fit into this whole picture? However, a Scrum Master needs to know that too, right? Because we all need to be coaching people to this process. I told you, I'm not pro individual, I'm not pro team. I'm pro that, hey, we're here to do a job and we all need each other, right? We are here because we are subject matter experts of our field, but we also need to know why we're doing, right? That's how, as a Scrum Master, I told you I did a retrospective of our ceremonies because we want to make sure that our ceremonies matter, right? That our ceremonies are part of the software development lifecycle. It's not just a meeting. And we have to coach people through that process. So this is a vision board that I actually did on the top. And that I think this is a good thing to practice. It can be fun. Just brainstorming. This is a physical one I did. Even when I wanted to change my hair color, because I told you I do that a lot. But it's also, there's mural, sorry, my Southern accent comes out sometimes, y'all. Mural, Canva, sounds like a 2-year-old trying to talk. Mural or Canva are just other ones. Lucid Spark I just learned about as well. It's actually a pretty cool tool for mind mapping. So if you're more of an electronic person, then that's a good option too, okay? And what it does is you need to get used to long range planning, roadmap building, because Scrum is part of Agile project management. Agile project management is project management. We have this big thing we're trying to accomplish. So even though we're breaking things up into increments, right, we still need to know overall what we're trying to accomplish, milestones that we're tracking along the way, and everything that we're doing should be getting us to that way. We're the experts in minimum viable product, MVP, right? So we want to make sure what is the minimum viable product in the the smallest components that are releasable throughout the project. You could do that with your own life, right? A vision board is something you can walk away doing today. You could do it with your career, you could do it with your personal life. So I say here, make list of areas in your life, set action items for each of those areas, prioritize them, break them up into sprints. And I'll show you what I'm doing in just a few moments, right? That you can do this, you can walk away to do. Agile is team-centered, it is still centered around a project, right? And you can't change something that doesn't exist, right? You need to have a plan in order to be Agile. Okay. And I love vision boards. I have a presentation on that too. So I'm always open to facilitate that as a conversation. Actually, 2017, I think I actually did a presentation for Atlanta Scrum Users Group on vision boards. I think so. All right, and then, so you have your long range planning, right? You have your list, you have your action items. Something that anybody can walk out of here today is to create a Kanban board for yourself. To do, doing, done. That's the basic. What you see here on the right is my mock-up for something that I was trying to build out what I wanted my Kanban board to look like in my office. And I actually just purchased all of my materials today. I knew I had to do it before I came to this meeting. And so that is something you can do. You can do it. I have both a virtual one. I have a Trello Kanban board that I use for my professional life. My phone though, so I don't know about Agile phones. I have, Apple phones. I have an Android, and I have reminders to where I can check things off on a day-to-day basis. It rolls over if I don't complete it, which annoys me. If I was supposed to do something and I didn't check it off, right? But you can also do it physical, just like I have. You can do it in front of you. I have a friend who he just has it on his window in front of him. So he has just his to do, doing, done. I have to do this week, doing, done, and then I have another one that's actually blocked and another column that's canceled or won't do. But y'all, it's whatever works for you. To-do list. And what this does is you're the example, right? Be the example. And that if people come to me and say, well, how can I get my team to be Agile? Start with yourself, right? Focus on yourself, hold yourself accountable, have yourself a backlog, prioritize yourself, right? Start organizing your own team before helping a team organize theirs, right? I will tell you, I got my job as a product owner because I had a personal Kanban board. I also have another friend, one of my colleagues now, who he was coming out of the military. He did not have a formal Scrum Master role. He created himself a website of everything that he does. So that's something you can do as well. And then I unofficially do my Kanban board. I review it. I would say I have a week-long sprint. So I like to start my week off by planning for my month, planning for my week, and then I plan day to day. So pretty much every Sunday, that's what I do Sunday nights, is I look at where I am and what I'm trying to accomplish. But it's up to you. I just want to keep things relatable, y'all. I just want to make it easy. Something you leave today. All right. This is also another one that honestly is not my favorite. It is not my favorite. I love metrics. I do not like pulling metrics. I do not like reporting. So it's the part of my job I honestly do not love, but it is necessary. And I don't know a Scrum Master that doesn't do any reporting, okay? Now, this is also the part where it changes from company to company, to be honest, because some Scrum Masters at one company do more reporting than others. And some companies have a business analyst that do most of their reporting, and the Scrum Master focuses more on the Agile stuff. In my company, we do all of it, okay? So again, you can start with doing metrics and reporting of your own life. This is literally from my MyFitnessPal. It has metrics, right? I am trying to lose weight. I'm trying to lose weight, trying to tone up. I was significantly either around my calories or under my calories, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. When I dove into it, as you can see here, this is an example, my sugars, I was in the red with sugars, right? So this is an example of what we do on a regular basis. I pulled metrics for my teams, and it helps figure out what are we doing well, what are some gaps, what are some trends, So when you're tracking progress versus commitments, what are areas that perform better than expected? You can do this in your own life, right? Exercising, eating foods, right? Making your bed versus how you feel over time, right? What are the trends? What are areas that need improvement? Again, the key takeaway is related to being the example, starting organizing your own work, and just getting that experience of our historicals will help us figure out what we need to do going forward, right? It's constantly iterating. Go ahead, Joshua. You have a
Yeah,
comment?
Katrina, I was thinking about this, and I find metrics to be, in a former life, heavily in analytics. So I think the hardest challenge of a Scrum, because it's one thing to show accountability on a sprint by sprint basis, moving cards from left to right, yeah. But over time, I find it to be most interesting that if you want to see overall project process, especially if you have multiple development teams in an integrated environment, to see, we all know that A's tend to stay with A's, and people build dev teams within corporations where they have high-end teams that are doing tip of the spear work, and then other teams that are doing operational or cleaning up technical debt, things like that, because it's practical, right? So I always find metrics to be an interesting conversation, because not only is it difficult to quantify them, but it has to be relative to the teams themselves as well too, because you can't apply that across the board. And all of us know this, but articulating that back to the business sometimes can be a challenge. To say, well, why isn't everybody accelerating at the same rate?
You also bring up a good point, right? As to estimation. Is what kind of metrics are we even talking about? Which that's a question. If you're going into a company, what metrics do they pull? What is their estimation? We were doing story points. Honestly, I hate story points, and the person who created story points hates story points. And I found in our teams, it was actually ruining us because they were getting stuck on these numbers that had no meaning to them. So we actually estimate in days now. And that has been amazing, more so for drag factors, right? Calculating what are all the amount of things that have come up in the 2 weeks that we did not account for. All right, so in terms of Joshua and your question, so we have found in our company that a day is a day to everyone, right? So it's something that means the same to everyone, but even still, I have 4 teams that I track metrics for. I'm not going to compare each team as to, oh, well, they did 12 work items this sprint, the other team did 5. Okay, well, is that normal for them? What's normal for the team? I have a team that only has 4 people. One of those is a dev lead, one is the quality engineer. They're going to perform very differently than the team that has 8 people, right? So we look at, and that is my, I think that's where the value of a Scrum Master comes in, or reminding people metrics are important, but they are not the whole story. They're a conversation starter. And I have my teams also get very weary when we start talking about metrics, because they go, well, that's going to mean something. Oh my gosh, somebody's going to hold us to this metric. That doesn't tell the whole story. I go, I know, but it's part of it. It's part of it, right? It's just like when if you tell somebody, well, you don't know me. Well, maybe they know a part of you, right? It's not the whole story, but they're saying there's a perception that has been created. And so within our teams, for example, we had a team that would, now granted, let me tell you what I do. I actually manually track all the work items that we're completing, and we can calculate we can visually see how often they're rolling over, how long they've rolled over. When we've adopted something into the sprint, I can also calculate the type of work item. So like story versus bug versus whatever. And we had one team a year ago that was rolling over a lot of items on a consistent basis. They were not bringing too many things into the sprint. And so we were like, okay, that's kind of weird. They're rolling over things a lot. Well, we realized there were a lot of subject matter experts on the team who were concurrently working on their own thing. So it was taking longer, right? So we had a lot in flight, not finishing anything. We also realized that this team was logging 80 hours of drag factors. 80 hours of drag factors. That's 80 hours for the team doing things that we did not plan for in sprint planning, right? So what we were able to do is saying, hey, this is not in the metrics, but we can say, hey, this is what's happening. let me ask a few questions, right? The question is this normal, right? These drag factors, is this something they have to do on a regular basis, right? If the answer to that is yes, hey, this is the work we have, these are all the work streams, then y'all, maybe a 2-week increment in sprint isn't going to work. Maybe it's better suited for Kanban, right? If we cannot plan within a time box, the answer to that was no. The answer was like, no, that's not normal. Let's see what we can do. Product owner and the dev lead at that team, they started reviewing the work and they started saying, what can we cut out? What can be just sent to somebody else? We also started telling the teammates, don't take on anything that without talking to the product owner and the dev lead first, right? Bring it to your team before saying yes. They go, well, it only takes me 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 6 of those is 60 minutes. That's an hour out of your day, right? So that kind of stuff. And that's a perfect example of what I can think of how we had the metrics. Without having the metrics, I wouldn't have had that information to see that trend. They were just going. And this was a team that also felt like at that time, they were the redheaded stepchild who were just getting thrown things. They were getting exhausted. They were doing it. They were such good troopers. They were doing it. And then but by one, changing our estimation method, being able to document it, we were able to see, oh my gosh, this is why they're exhausted. This is why they're exhausted. And yeah, they're being thrown things left and right. They got 10 work streams going on at the same time. They got 10 people on, well, we'll just say 7, like 7 people on their team. Not all 7 people are working on something, all doing the best they possibly can. But is this how it's supposed to be normal?
I do the same thing, Katrina. Metrics I use to calibrate people as much as I do to quantify the work. And once we start calibrating people and understanding what they can do, like you were saying in the beginning, it's all about people, you get way better estimations of what's going to happen within the work stream to be able to do it. And then reinforce that back to your product teams to be able to say, listen, are you sure this is what the customer wants? Because care to quality, is this nice to have, or is this needed to have? And I think it helps sharpen what product teams can do as well, especially product owners, to say, what is that expectation from a feature set to be what is most important?
And so when we start talking about, obviously, Joshua and I were talking about very specific instance, but I have to do metrics in my job, right? And I want y'all to be able to say, what are the things that a Scrum Master does? What can I start doing, right? This is actually a wellness planner that my sister got me a year ago. And in it, it talks monthly progress, daily progress, weekly progress. What are my goals? What are my measurements? You know, the things that I'm trying to excel at. That's metrics, y'all. It's stuff that we find the thing that you love. You like, I mean, those of you that play fantasy football and watch baseball stats, you're talking metrics. You may not know it, but you do. Okay. All right. Now, the other thing about where we start with us is we have to hold ourselves accountable. Our job as Scrum Masters is to remove blockers or impediments with our teams, to follow up. We made our agenda, we took our notes, and now we go to that person and say, hey, during stand-up yesterday, you said you were going to follow up with so-and-so. And the next thing I'm going to listen out for 2 things. They are either going to say, no, I didn't do that. And I'm going to say, why not? Or they're going to say, yes, I did, but I didn't get a hold of them. And I'm going to say, okay, would you like me to reach out to them? I tell people I'm partly a professional stalker because there are some people that they've tried to reach out. They've tried to take initiative on their own. But for whatever reason, whenever I send a message, hey, so-and-so's been trying to get in touch with you, they respond immediately. And so sometimes that's what we have to do. But we also have to do that with ourselves. I'll tell you a situation. I had a retrospective. This was last year. I like to do games for retrospectives, right? Play-Doh, Legos, right? I like to keep my teams interested. One of the things I like to say, one of the things I said was, when you think of last sprint, what's a word or phrase that you would use to describe that? Build that. And at the time, I also had another action item on my board to fix the board. The configuration of the board was killing people, right? I didn't have the full authority over that. So we go to do this retrospective and somebody on my team goes, I don't know why we're playing games when I still can't see the task on the board. I don't know why we're playing games when I still can't get what I need to. That's holding me accountable. I hold them accountable. We have to also understand what it's like to be held accountable, right? So these are some accountability partners I've had. Olga was someone I met when I lived in Dallas. We would text each other every single day. Well, first of all, we would meet once a month to say what are the goals we want to accomplish. And then we would text every single day, what did we do that day to accomplish our goals? Okay, these three gentlemen, I should have made them bigger. I don't know why I made them so small, but these were three gentlemen at a previous company I worked with. I adore them. We met every 2 weeks, same thing. Hey, professionally, personally, what are our goals? What are the things that went really well from the last time we met? What are the things that didn't go so well? And I miss that. So Olga was in my personal life. These gentlemen, Derek, Jim, and Dave. Some of you actually might know him. Some of you might know them, but Dave Pryor, actually, he runs the podcast Drunken PM. But anyway, they're just great men. And this is something very easy you can do, y'all. You can walk out here today and say, hey, who wants to be my accountability partner? I have a presentation on that too, actually. I didn't, so it's funny, right? I think I'm funny because I'm telling you these things, but I've lived it. That's why, like, y'all, I've lived this. I'm teaching you things that I've actually done. This is not me telling you to do things that I don't do. I actually practice this stuff. Okay. Actually, last night, without asking, one of my aunts texted me 3 things at her weekly goals. She didn't ask me if I want to participate, but I sent my 3 goals back too. And one of my other friends, one of my goals from last month was to set up this dang Kanban board. So I texted her today when I ordered all that stuff. And yes, AD, I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce your name, wants to be accountability partner. So if you are open to this type of partnership, please reach out to them. But again, before you can hold your team accountable, you have to hold yourself accountable, and you have to get comfortable with someone telling you to step up too, right? I have people who reach out to me as Scrum Master saying, well, how can I get the team to listen to me? Team morale, but also be the example, right? We're not there to just tell people what to do. We're a team. And with that, when there's people, there will always be conflict. This is the part of my job that I would say I don't love, but I actually do love it. I mean, I told you I have a master's in conflict management. I love people. I love problem solving. I love when I can bring people together and when having meaningful dialogue and meaningful conversations, okay? I have to deal with this on a regular basis. Sometimes it's a conflict of, we were supposed to have a release on a Saturday, and there were a lot of people going to be involved at this throughout the day. There was an itinerary where people were coming in and out. Conflict such as, hey, we should probably have a meeting before that day to answer what's going to be released, what Zoom are we using, what Slack are we using to communicate. And even on that call, one of our SREs, our site reliability engineers, says, oh, I didn't know that was actually going to be released, right? So that's a conflict management style. Conflict is not always bad, right? But it can also be more intentional. When I don't like this, but sometimes the blocker is a person, and sometimes we have to escalate when people either aren't getting along, or when we have a problem child, arsonist on the team. But then also sometimes it's where this person seems to be that they're not performing well. But my first question is always like, are you okay? Are you okay? And you know, I'll be honest, I'm going through a divorce this year. I just finished up a divorce. It's sad. People have personal things going on in their lives that impact their work, right? And that's why I think this is the part I love about my job, because what happens at work impacts your home, and what happens at home impacts your work. And people are people. So sometimes it's, I had one time where I was warned about this person, was like, oh, that's a problem child. Now, meanwhile, I've already dealt with a problem child. I go to meet this person. He's not a problem child. He just learns differently, right? He was someone possibly had a little special needs. And he just communicated different than other people. And he was actually one of my favorite people to work with. Okay. So as a Scrum Master, we deal with conflict all day. Sometimes it is just an operations conflict, and sometimes it's people, right? So intentionally talk to someone. And how do we gain those skills, right? Intentionally talk to someone you know who shares a different opinion than you. Get comfortable with that. Watch news outlets or listen to radio stations that may not side with your political views. Have that difficult conversation with a friend or family member that you may have been avoiding, right? Create a safe space for others to confide in you and be open and vulnerable. I had a situation where with my teams, I was vulnerable in the sense that I was going through a divorce because, you know, with this whole remote world, people could see I was kind of in chaos, was coming and going. And that opportunity actually allowed one of my teammates to confidentially confide that she had some medical issues. And she had been coming and going in meetings, and she didn't feel like she could talk to anybody. So she didn't tell anyone for a whole year. But by me confiding in that, she felt comfortable enough to share that with me. Now, she did that personally, right? Didn't do that in a group. But part of our job is to create a safe space. Okay, so get comfortable giving and receiving conflict, feedback, and get comfortable with conflict. And then all that goes into retrospectives, right? What is going well, what's not going well, and what are some action items that we can do going forward? So these are some examples of what I've also done, but you can walk away. Personally, some of you who have a business background might refer to this as SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. New Year's resolutions. If you've been setting a New Year's resolution, you've been looking at what didn't go well the last year, what you want to do next, you're already living a retrospective. Professional. I tell anybody who is going to applying for any job, save at least the last 5 minutes to do a retrospective. You can even say, what about my skills are you most excited about, and what would you like to see me improve? Right? And then with your career, what's going well? And then team, you can do this any day, any time, any night, work, family. Some people have them family meetings. What do you love? What are current challenges? And of course, the key takeaways are check-ins, continuous feedback, continuous improvement. And as I said, I've done retrospectives on my team ceremonies and my team retrospectives. And then finally, if you don't like to do any of these, if you don't like to take notes, if you don't like to set an agenda or public speaking or talking to stakeholders or talking to people in general, or you don't like vision boards and long range planning and metrics and conflict and people, specifically people, if you don't like people and you don't like to-do lists, you are going to be miserable. You might be better for other roles. And so if you prefer being an individual contributor, you hate meetings or working with people in general, only want to develop and build good products, or just lukewarm about life, then you might possibly hate being a Scrum Master, or at least not be a very good one, right? And these things of being an individual contributor, being a good developer, being a good tester, those are all things we need, right? Those are all things we need. And it just might be where Scrum Master might not be the role for you. But again, any questions you have about the roles, I can go into more detail later. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me at thescrummother@gmail.com, and I'm happy to provide information. And there's some people on this call who I've actually chatted with, so they can be my reference. And then I'll send this out, of course, like I said, resources mentioned. But that's me. That's the life as a Scrum Master. And so I want to do a retrospective. Have you learned at least one thing that you can walk away today? And you can come off mute, or you can post in the chat that this is, was it beneficial? Did you learn at least one thing that you could walk away today doing to get practice as a Scrum Master? Okay.
Hi, this is Patrick. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Patrick.
Okay, so not only did I learn not one, but all 10, but it was refreshing to hear that there are some things that I have already been doing that I haven't been giving myself credit for. So
That is often the case when I talk to people. When I go, I had someone I was working with who was an executive assistant. I'm like, honey, you've been working with C-suite. You've been talking to stakeholders at all levels of organization. I can guarantee you've been working how to talk to people, setting agendas, taking notes, getting comfortable, planning things. So absolutely.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi, Lewis.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what Patrick was saying. I definitely look at Scrum Masters like being a parent, because I've been doing stuff like this with my kids. Ask them how was their day at school. Everything's okay. Anything you need to tell me, X, Y, and Z, and then work those issues out. So even like you brought the point of looking at stats with football. So just looking at everyday life, I feel like you taught me that, hey, I can just continue to work on these things to become a better or a Scrum Master. Because I'm not a Scrum Master, I'm in the process of training. So yeah, that brought a lot of light onto the subject though.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Lewis. And actually, that's a good point about parenthood. I have spoke to multiple people who have been stay-at-home parents for a while, right? So they always worry about how to get back into the working world in general, but specifically as a Scrum Master. If you've been managing a home, I don't care who you are. If you've been managing a home, you are at home operations. You have all the skills you need to be successful, managing a schedule, managing finances, organizing, event planning, managing emotions, and people's personalities. Sometimes those personalities are throwing things at you or throwing up, but you have all the skills you need to be successful, to get started at least.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on basically what Lewis was just mentioning on about parenting. I was a choir director in public schools for 8 years. So event planning, facilitating, managing people, making sure that everyone's on task. And even the whole point that you made about planning out things to the minute. For choir directing, it's like literally we're doing 4 minutes of like vocal warm-ups and exercises to build into this. And I would even break that down to like the exercises, how many seconds those would take and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of this made me realize that some of the skill sets that I had from that past life were really applicable. So I really appreciate all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to first say thank you so much. I really appreciate your perspective on a lot of these things. And similar to Jacob, I'm also coming from education, working with kids with special needs. And so these are all things that you definitely use within that arena as well. And I loved how you shared that with conflict. You always ask, are you okay first? Because I think so many times people can assume the worst of people, but people don't want to cause problems. They really want to do the best and bring the best to the table. And so, yeah, I appreciate that.
Actually, Kayla, thank you for reminding, because that was the thing that I wrote down about the whole coaching teamwork aspect that I feel like is blended in my presentation, but I probably should separate that, because my professional background, like if you want to say, what should you know about working with me? I believe we are here for a reason. I believe that people want to be here. In general, I believe people want to do a good job. They just want to know what the expectations are.
Yeah.
And that stakeholders, they're not bad people, right? They just want expectations too, right? I use the example of Amazon. When I get notified that my Amazon package is going to be early, I'm like, woohoo! When I get notified it's going to be on time, I'm like, okay, cool. But if I get notified my Amazon package is going to be late, they better have a reason why, right? Or I'd at least have an expectation of when I'm going to receive it.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And so that's just my view of people in general. And if people don't want to be there, then I genuinely try to help figure out what we can do to help someone thrive in a different role or different company.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Pretz TG says the SWOT analysis was a new one. It's an interesting way to approach planning. That in retrospect would have been a good way to condense concerns rather than addressing the inevitable flood of what about that drag meetings out. Do you mind elaborating on that? Okay, never mind. So I learned SWOT analysis in the business degree, but it's also something that anybody can do on yourself. What are your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Because essentially that's what a retrospective is, what we're doing. And then I want to ask Joshua, so you are very much into this world. Is there something about that you learned from this presentation or that you affirm?
Yeah, I think something that I wanted to reiterate that I think is so crucial. We're talking about the conflict piece of it. I do a lot of work connecting with people to find out what people are doing personally as much as I do professionally. Because 9 times out of 10, stress indicators that come in are from 2 reasons. It's an outside influence that comes in that's causing a problem, something in their personal lives that they're dealing with, whatever it may be. Or to your point, Katrina, expectations have been misaligned to the capacity of what the person can do. And those become stressors. And in my universe in consulting too, there's a lot of interplay with different team members and things like that. So you're always getting new teams on every project you're with. And I can't stress enough that having, and I think we talked about this a little bit in the beginning too, Katrina, before everybody shut up, having the opportunity to talk with people and to make those connections and to communicate, you will find out way more about what's going on and the challenges that people have. So when you get to those meetings with what's going on, that those are like coronations of what we're going to do rather than meetings of conflict where we're asking about what's happening, because you already know what are all the dimensions there. So as a great Scrum, you're figuring out how to knock those blockers out of the way to continue to facilitate work. So I think as you ended with that, Katrina, I really appreciate that because it's a huge part of every day and a great takeaway to have at the end. So yeah.
Actually, the retrospective that I told you about where I like to do that, saying, hey, when you think about the last 2 weeks, what is a word or phrase that comes to mind? Build that, draw that, whatever, was mind blowing. I just wanted to do something fun, right? That my teams were asking. But let me tell you what, it was so much more valuable than the regular what went well, what didn't go well, because immediately somebody goes, well, does it have to be at work? I'm like, oh, no. That person drew bananas because they were a single father. They were relocating from one office to another. They were relocating from their home to a new home to be near the new office, all within 2 weeks. And so their life was bananas, right? Personally and professional. Now, I have so many different other examples of that, but it was so much more deeper and telling of what actually was going on. Now, we still save time to say, okay, what can we do to really focus on? But I think that's also where again, the compassion operations, our job is to create a safe space for people just to talk, to make sure that we are okay as individuals, as well as, okay, now what can we do? Instead, we talk about our problems. What are our solutions to be able to go forward, right?
Like everything in life, to your point, great teams have great chemistry. And if you want great teams and you want to be a part of facilitating those great teams, it is your responsibility to build chemistry. So the other piece I was also going to say as a takeaway, Katrina, is if you are uncomfortable with talking, it is time to get comfortable with talking. Like that is going to be a big part. I was asked literally by Glenn about 40 minutes ago, or 40 minutes before the meeting, that he needed some help to get in here and do this. And I feel close to the people that we're having a conversation now, incredibly confident to be able to talk with you guys. And it's a big part of what you do on a daily basis, because you will have to ask for things. You will have to reach out to C-level people potentially to sit there and say, here are some of the things that you need to help us with. And obviously do that with some diplomacy, obviously do it with some candor and some humility, as well as some humor. And these are tools in your toolbox to do it. So I think that's the second takeaway too, Katrina, is that if you're not comfortable with talking, it is time to start comfortable with talking. And I will tell you, the best thing you can do, and I know we all can't do this right now because we don't maybe have those shared spaces or what have you with our family or whatever, keep those cameras on, especially remote. It is the best way to see people that you're engaged in some capacity when you're doing something, and to be here for it. I can't stress that enough. And I think it's a great thing to add to the presentation.
And that goes to actually the people who have your hands raised, right? Willing to speak up. Maya, I saw your hand go up first.
Yes, so I have my CSM. My background is not necessarily, it would not translate to Scrum Master, so to speak. So do you have any suggestions as far as like volunteer work so that you can get the experience? I have Googled volunteer. I've gone on YouTube, things like that, Slack, all of those platforms, but I'm really not finding anything. And I'm actually in the Charlotte area, so I'm not
Okay.
in Georgia.
So,
yeah.
there's a few things I heard you say, that you have your CSM, but your background is not traditionally like within tech, right? So I heard you say that, but then I also heard you say, what are some volunteer ways that you can kind of get your foot in the door? I'm going to address the first question because in my experience and what I'm working with other people, just having a degree, just having a background is really helpful. I know somebody just posted on my LinkedIn the other day or Instagram that they have an art background and a literature background, right? But they have a degree. Now, there are some companies that are hiring if you do not have a college degree, but really if you have a college degree, the question on the application is, do you have a higher education, right?
My background is political science, and most of them are looking for people in IT or business.
Okay, yeah, it honestly.
Katrina, I have a literature degree. I mean, that's what I have. That's how I started out in the business. And actually, with my degree, what happened was I started fumbling around with databases and doing all this stuff to build essentially file shares for people writing stuff, and that's what turned into my data and analytics piece. So it's absolutely doable.
Yeah, and it also depends on the company, right? So again, if you're looking at, I have so much to this. Okay, I'll try to be fast. Okay, so in terms of your background and your college experience, first of all, that's where the CSM and the actual certification gets your foot in the door, right? But in terms of, it depends on what the job application, what they're saying, what preferred background, because it also depends. Every Scrum Master role may be different at different companies based off of what they need. However, that is why these conversations and getting comfortable speaking to someone is so valuable, right? I was working with a potential Scrum Master who she actually is a current developer who has been having a Scrum Master apprenticeship, but because she didn't have a 4-year degree, she got declined almost immediately, right? But what she did is she kept trying to reach out to people, and I suggested, I'm like, contact the recruiter, contact somebody at that company and say, hey, I meet all of these other requirements. Can we talk? I mean, the worst thing they're going to say is, no, this is non-negotiable for my company, but you just never know. Making the personal connections are so valuable, because I mean, I would say maybe to an extent, statistics is, it's got to give at some point. But then Maya, the second part of your question is in terms of volunteering. Honey, you're looking too hard. Any organization, find something that you love. If you want to get into volunteering, right? Because you don't need a volunteer before you become a Scrum Master. But if you really want to get into volunteering to build up that stuff, that experience we just talked to, find an organization that you love, no matter what it is, and be the party planner. Be the event organizer. And honestly, I'm sure you could reach out to Improving, and Joshua would love to have someone coordinate these meetings, right? Find an Agile meetup. I can tell you right here in Atlanta, Agile Scrum, Atlanta Scrum Users Group, as well as there's a group here called the Women in Agile Atlanta. They are begging for people to help organize. It helps give you the experience, it puts you in the industry, and it helps you meet people. So that's what my recommendation. Honestly, though, if you're get any organization that you can be a part of, it doesn't have to be a specific type of organization, but an Agile meetup group is always helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, Sanjay.
Hey, Katrina. Firstly, thank you so much for all the valuable points that you have put across. This is my first meetup group ever. And I just want to, piggyback on what you said on to Maya about her job search. In fact, 3 years or 4 years ago, like I was in a similar boat as her. So one thing what I did was the strategy that what I applied was that I reached out to people on LinkedIn asking for informational interviews. So that was like really gold for me, is because that when you try to network, people say that, okay, you know what, like I'm reaching out to people, hey, you know what, do you have any positions in your company? Can you refer me? So that's never gonna work. So ask for informational interview. Just reach out to people and take real interest in understanding their resume. Just go through their resume and take interest in, like, appreciate like their career, and quote that on your cold message that you're gonna sending to them. So that, and then ask for their time. And again, like getting an interview or getting an informational interviews or the numbers game. If you send it to like 100 people, probably 10 will get back. For me, it's hardly like I've sent it to around like 200 people, only like 10 or 20 got back. Out of 10 or 20, only 5 or 6 gave their time to actually talk. So simultaneously, I was also attending many interviews. I've noted down the question and I was asking the same questions to them so that your answers would get refined, because the way that you give the answers for a similar questions and with a person who's like 10 or 15 years of experience, give the answers for that same question, it's going to make a lot of difference. So try information interview. So I would say that's one of the important thing. And I just wanted to highlight on just 2 things that that you have spoken today is the accountability. Wow, that is like a golden one, because accountability is basically like, it sets you up back on track. In my experience, I was working in a company, in an e-commerce company, where we had the community of practices and all those things. At least I was able to pick each other Scrum Master's brain. But the company that I work right now, we don't have such kind of practices. So I think accountability is like really good. In fact, I think I made a contact today, so probably I'll be reaching out to that person for accountability. So thank you for that. And also the second aspect that you have mentioned is that you need to know the roadmap, right? Like, you need to understand the product roadmap. I think again that ties back to the generalized specialist mindset, that Agile talks about. You should, it's not like jack of all trades, but basically you're really good at one thing, but also you add value to the other things. So again, it ties back to what you said, right? Like if you wanted to be agile, like you need to be agile yourself first place. And so that particular aspect is an eye opener for me, because whenever, like, I'm not from a technical background. Basically, I'm from a business background, and technical is not my cup of tea, basically. So when people talk to me, when people do a tech talk to me, I'll be like, okay, please explain it in English, not on a technical term. So that's how I go. But then when it comes to understanding about the product roadmap, so I think what you have told about understanding the product roadmap is also, it's kind of like, you becoming a generalized specialist yourself. So there's the few things I just wanted to, call out. And thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjay. I appreciate it. Yeah, because we're all here. We all should know the roadmap, right? It may not be our job to present the roadmap. May not be our job to present the vision, but all of us should know why we're doing what we're doing and make sure that we're here trying to achieve the same goals, right?
Yeah.
So that's my perspective.
Because my director asked me to present a roadmap in a meeting. I was like, well, that's a product owner's job. Like, why should I? And now it kind of like, wakes me up.
Well, thank you, Sanjay. I appreciate you for being here. And I also want to echo informational interviews. The worst somebody can say is no. I mean, they could be rude and tell you don't contact me ever again. That's never happened to me, though. I mean, they may just not respond, but y'all, please make connections. Make connections. Don't be afraid to reach out. Alka, actually, Alka, I have to rave on her. She's about to talk, but I was going to use you as an example. Alka and we know each other because I work with her husband, but she was one that she reached out. She learned about Agile. She had a question. She came to me, and she was not a Scrum Master. She was a developer, but she came to me with questions. She knew what she wanted to ask, and she asked if she could meet with me. Right? That's the word. I mean, I was available. I love doing what I'm doing. But so shout out to Alka because she wanted to learn more, and she asked. Go ahead, Alka.
So in fact, I would have told this that it's a shout out to Katrina, because she knew that I'm a mother of twins and how I'm handling at home. And I actually used all the techniques what the Scrum Master used to use at home by scheduling the time, planning the kids, school planning of school, their outside activities and everything. And Katrina just clicked me, just one click, this Katrina gave it to me that, are you able to speak? Are you able to give a feedback? Are you able to communicate? Are you able to take care of the system? Are you able to talk? What is required and what is not required? Can you divide the things in according to you and plan it and organize it? This is what Katrina told me, and it just clicked me the way she told it to me, that yes, this is something which I want to learn and which I can be. And that's what Katrina just opened my eyes. So that's the reason I wanted to say shout out to Katrina. Like, yay, Katrina, you did this. And right now I pursued, right now I'm working at Xavient, and I was being hired as a project manager. But since I convinced my CEO saying that, hey, it's time for our small firm to turn out to be agile, and they shifted me to a Scrum Master. So I'm like really happy that we are going towards the agile, and that makes a lot of benefits to it. Thank you, Katrina, for leading me this.
Of course, yes, because that's it, y'all. I mean, just asking, just getting to know people. But I also want to say, the people that are most successful are the ones who I joke about this. I joke at the beginning, like, if I can find something, you can find something, right? I provide resources, and I as a servant leader, right? But the people that are most successful as a Scrum Master, this just helps you know, right? Are to be resourceful, right? Is to find information. We are the information bearers, right? We're kind of almost a catalog of information for our company, at least in my company we are. And so find, when you reach out to someone like Sanjay or Akka did, right? Know what your ask is. What do you want from them? It's saying, and when you say, hey, I don't need to get hired right now. I want to learn more about your company. I want to learn more about what you do in your path, and showing interest. Because when people reach out to me automatically and go, can you help me get a Scrum Master job? They're sometimes probably a little irritated, because I start going, well, why do you want to be a Scrum Master? How did you learn about being a Scrum Master? What does Agile mean to you? Right? Because also I love my job and I want to protect it. And I'm not saying, and I want to make sure that people actually want to thrive in this role. So yes, thank y'all. Go ahead, Nanit.
So before I start, Samantha asked a question in the chat a long time ago, and I think it's a really helpful question.
Okay, this is the one, and I was going to come back to that. Samantha, is this the one that you're building up your resume coming in from another field? Can we add these events to our resume? So this is what I would do. I'm going to probably defer to Joshua for this. I mean, I've never done that. I think that that's not a terrible idea. Now, what I do on mine is I actually get involved with an organization on a regular basis, and I put that on my resume, right?
Katrina, I was going to say the presentation, I think, is important, Samantha. So as you learn these things, participation, saying that you're part of this user group is something that you do on a habitual basis. That's definitely saying, because it tells prospective employers that you're part of the community. So you're doing your informal learnings and trainings with experts within the field or within your local area. The other thing that helps too is that you present to these things as well. So a combination of those things belies to what Katrina's been saying the whole time, is that you're doing these in informal capacity. Some of the stuff that Maya's bringing up as well too in her question, but at the same time, that sort of repeatability of what you're doing in addition to participation shows that sort of passion and stuff. And a lot of times, you know, there's 10 people in a role, but people who convey that they participate in that networking exercise, that's a big part of why they're brought on, because they know the company knows that you're learning all the time and bringing new things in as well too.
Yeah. And then now what I will say is, if you do, I'll just throw this out there. Sometimes, you know, like for example, we'll host a webinar or we'll host a conference. When you do, what I would do is if you're new to the industry, put conferences and events. It's not what I would fully highlight, but I've done it before. I've had it on my LinkedIn. I have had it on my LinkedIn, conferences and events that I've attended.
I like that you can have like a section in your resume maybe that says like conferences, events, or maybe like informal training, and then build up kind of a list there.
Yeah,
that I would do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The key piece is it shows active in a community that you're interested in. that's what the takeaway would be from a prospective employer, that you're doing that. And that's why certifications can matter, because if you have a combination of certification, informal training as in presentations and stuff like that, in addition to those community pieces, it shows not only your interest in it, not only your willingness to get those certifications, but it also shows you're actively promoting it as well too. Companies love that stuff. I know we do.
And actually just being attentive to time, because we as Scrum Masters, we do love that. I think this is a great conversation. I have nowhere to be. I'm happy to stay on to answer, but if you do, I know Joshua might have some things on the plate, or if we need to wrap up at all.
Let's continue with the questions, Katrina, because people are enthusiastic to do it. I have a couple of pieces at the end, but I don't think it's gonna, they'll only take about a minute or two.
Okay. All right. So well, first of all, Samantha, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Actually, to that point of resume, this is just something I'm seeing a lot. When talking about skills, if you have like technical experience, like things like tools, right? Tools and technologies, you can put that separate than your skills too, in terms of, you know, conflict resolution, diversity, inclusion, and then the other one would be Jira, Trello, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
All right. And then actually anybody email me and I can email you a copy of my resume that I used to get the job. So email me or send me a message on LinkedIn. All right, Nedit.
Thank you so much. I'll try to be really quick. I think I understand why Samantha asked that question. Samantha, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, last year I got my Scrum Master certificate, and I was trying to apply for a job. Nobody was calling. Nobody was inviting me for an interview, and I understood why. So I was trying to find the way to find a job that is somehow similar, where I can apply framework into the position. So I was working as a project manager, where to my boss I was project manager because I was responsible for results of the project, but to my team I was Scrum Master, where I tried to act more as a leader, as a servant leader, help them out, assist them, show them that we are a team and that we work together towards results. Now I try to consider that as a agile or Scrum Master, and I added to my resume. So now I started applying for jobs, and nobody was inviting me for an interview. So everybody was sending me emails back like, no, like we moved on, you know, like stuff like that, without even talking to me. So that's where my struggle is as of now. And I think, is it Maya that asked about? Yeah, Maya asked about volunteer. I wanted to add to that. Now, you know, I started, you know, applying for jobs for, let's say, mid-level, you know, and then entry level. Now I'm in a position where I'm actually trying to find also volunteer position where I'm going to, okay, you know, nobody's going to call me for an interview to give me a job. You know, that's fine. You know, maybe somebody is considering that as a risk. Let me try to reach out to people who would be willing, you know, to have me as an intern, or, you know, to shadow someone.
Are you, so let me just make sure I hear you right. You are currently looking for a Scrum Master role?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just putting this out there. Feel free to email me and we can talk about maybe just start with stuff like your resume, right? What's the format of the resume, and we can chat about looking for a job and what I might be able to help you with that too.
Okay.
And then also, just for those of you who may have joined late, Cvent is hiring for entry-level Scrum Master roles. Scrum Master 1 is what we start at. So please take a look at that, Cvent Careers. But yes, I'm happy to help anybody with the resume and the interviewing process.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, sounds good. I'll reach out. But also about the accountability partner, I'm going to add my LinkedIn profile there. A couple of us that actually met up recently. We are all beginners and we are trying to support each other. So if somebody want to reach out you know, cannot help necessarily with the job or anything, you know, but we can just, you know, talk about, you know, the problems we are facing, and you know, we can just support each other. So
crowdsourcing is amazing. Crowdsourcing is amazing because you never know what somebody else is going to be able to give a look. While I'm already a Scrum Master, honestly, if you got spelling errors on your resume, somebody else can tell you that. I don't need to tell you that, right? So yes, I love that. I love that.
thank you, Katrina, so much.
You're welcome. Let's see, Patimer.
Sorry, there's supposed to be a period in between P and E. It's Pascal though.
Okay, Pascal. Okay.
Yeah. So just thank you very much, Katrina. Thank you so much. And just want to also say thank you to Horace who invited me here. You know, this is my very, very first meeting, you know, and just want to say something to Maya, and, you know, also encourage her, backing it up with what Sanjay said, because I've actually, I've been interviewing, and my journey is sometimes I go into the job descriptions. I see what the recruiters want. And you'll be amazed that some few recruiters don't even know some Scrum ceremonies. So if you already got your certificate and you know something like retrospective, you'll be amazed that when you mention that during the interview, the recruiter could even offer you an agile coach job, you know, or say, hey, come in and can you help the team understand this aspect of Scrum, you know? So just letting Maya know that, you know, even with no background, you can learn like the tools, Jira, roadmaps and all those things, you know, you perfect yourself in it, and there's someone out there who would capitalize on just that strength of yours, you know.
That's a question. I want to talk to that a little bit. One of the questions when you're getting to know a company is to ask if they have a tool specialist and what their IT department looks like, because that's going to tell you a lot about how much of the tool you're going to have to actually be the expert for. I have to do a lot of Jira, but we actually have a Jira specialist, and so I lean on her for a lot, and we have an amazing IT department.
Can I add to that really quick?
Sure.
So to me, the biggest concern is what you can, so you over here, you talked about operations versus compassion. What is easier to learn, operations and tools, or those human skills?
Oh, this is an answer.
Yeah. I'll say this, Katrina. My experience in that is that it's easier to have a conversation about tools in an interview, let's say. But at the end of the day, it's always going to go back to how are you going to resolve conflict? Because the tools are just an approximation of the actual work. It's the output, right? We talk about metrics. There's an input where you're designing the stories for a product owner, and I think there's an output. So my preference is to say is that you're going to need both. It's just when the conversation is going to happen.
Yeah. Go ahead. I have a perspective as well, but go ahead.
Every time I receive the email, we found a better candidate, I would be like, well, how do you know? You never talked to me.
Okay, so this is bringing up a separate thing though. This is bringing a separate thing. Nothing, unless they specifically say, don't contact me, you can always respond and ask like, hey, do you have any feedback on my application or my resume? That a lot of people feel like that's somewhat taboo. Whenever I suggest that, they feel uncomfortable, like, oh my gosh, they don't tell me to do that, right? Doesn't matter, right? Reach out to someone, and you can always say, hey, or find a technical recruiter who on LinkedIn and ask them to review your resume. I told you I can help you with that too, but I'm not a technical recruiter. I just know what I would look for if I was hiring for a Scrum Master. But then the second thing is, crap, I lost my point of view.
You probably wanted to answer what is easier to
oh,
learn.
yes, the easier. Yeah. Okay, I can teach somebody Scrum. I can teach somebody to use a tool. I cannot teach people to talk to people. Right. But
and to have empathy.
I can help. I can help. But soft skills, are part of what make a Scrum Master really amazing and what makes us really good at the Scrum Master role. So if soft skills are a struggle for you, I would ask two things. One, are they just innately difficult for you? Or do you feel like there's something that you can learn to, for example, I am not diplomatic. I'm very friendly and I'm compassionate and I love people, but I'm actually very, very blunt to an extent, right? What you see is what you get. That is going to work really well for some teams, and some teams that's not going to work really well. And some teams actually want a very lovey-dovey team, and some teams, depending on country or culture, want a more of a militaristic Scrum Master who just want to come to work and do their job. So it really just depends. But in general, I think the thing that makes somebody good at Scrum Master role is someone who generally they know people's birthdays, right? They know anniversaries, or to Josh's point, they know what somebody's kids' names are and what their spouse's names are. Those are not mandatory, but those are traits that I can tell you tend to be in a lot of Scrum Masters.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But it is help. But that's where the coaching and mentoring comes in, and having a good counselor. Right? Having a good counselor to work through those things. I'm very big on mental health, but those are things that someone can help you with too. Pascal, did you have another question, or is that, does that answer your question?
Well, that was it for that part. And I just wanted to, just amplify more on retrospectives. You saying you had retrospectives on your ceremonies. I'm a business owner and healthcare industry, running therapist. And before I knew what Agile and whatever was, there was a time in business we were having lots of missed visits, and we won't be able to pick it up until 2 weeks later. It caught my attention when you said you plan your week from Sunday evenings. And you see, I took it upon myself to say, hey, we have to detect this thing early. And in order to detect it early, we need to basically put it in the navigation early, and that has really helped for years and years now. And just, thanking you for amplifying that and making it bolder to me, So Sunday evenings, I'm not feeling weird that I'm up, scheduling the week,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And so I know I have nowhere to be. So we do want to wind down though, because I know it's getting into bedtimes and some people, or for example, it's past midnight, but some people want to eat dinner. But I know Shubhangi has had your hand up for a while. So I want to.
Yes, Shubhangi. Thank you. I'll be quick. I just wanted to respond to Maya's question about volunteer thing. Of course, I can be reached at LinkedIn, SAJ05. Put that in the chat. I wanted to say that if you can find some civic tech opportunity, that will be really good. So just Google civic tech. And there are lots of people doing lots of good work in IT and trying to improve the country and, assisting government in different projects. Just be part of any project. Every project is full of developers, less project management. They call it project management, but you can try to bring in Scrum. But just know that it is very difficult to follow Scrum or Agile in volunteer environment. But nevertheless, that is one way to, knock the doors. I just thought of sharing that for the benefit of everybody. Thank you, Katrina, for this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I know we've got two other people with their hands raised, so we'll go ahead and go to those two people, and then we will call it a night. Prez TG.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll be super quick as well. I've been a Scrum Master for 3 years now, and recently I stepped into a more technical role. So I took a break with the Agile and stuff. I actually misspoke. I said Scrum Master, but I've just self-identified as an Agile coach for a while. So in the new technical role, I'm thinking I'm away from, the Agile space, but turn to find out my company actually wants to adopt Agile into its practice. And because of my certifications, I'm kind of the designated change agent. So the problem I'm facing now is I have a team that's super immature with Agile, and they're receptive to Kanban, which I think is super appropriate for like starting teams that maybe aren't as familiar with the concepts. The issue is with remote work, I guess the exposure exercises that I'm used to doing with teams that are maybe new to Agile kind of don't translate digitally. So I was wondering, do you have any like kind of ideas or maybe exercises that you've used in the past to accommodate a more distributed remote team?
So I think you've heard me say this. I like to make sure I understand correctly, and I hear a few things coming up. One, you are now the change agent for an organization who's going to transition from traditional project management into Agile. I also heard that you are working with multiple teams. And then the third thing is basically how to get people involved, right? Because the way you worded it was getting people interested, but my clarifying question is, do you want to get people to build team morale, or you want to teach them about Agile? Because those are two separate things.
Okay, so it's one user group. For now, this is kind of like the pilot team.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better, because that was my number one thing. I was like, if you're working with 10 teams and they don't know what's going on, I would probably scale it down a little bit.
Right, yeah, I wouldn't even have accepted the offer at that point.
Okay.
But sorry, so up until now, they've had lectures about what Agile is, but they're still not as confident in their understanding, or like they're still trying to wrap their heads around it. And then my experience when dealing with new teams, we do certain exercises to expose them. I don't know if you're probably familiar with like the paper airplane, or maybe the bridges exercise, where you have different teams building different types of paper airplanes, and we switch up the requirements mid production just to kind of incorporate drive the iterative development and the willingness to adapt based on the changing requirements and things like that. And that's always worked in the past, in my experience, with getting teams at least introduced to the concepts in a more demonstrative, like hands-on way. Because I mean, people can read and listen to lectures all day long, but some people just need to do to really retain that info.
Okay, so it sounds like you're actually dealing with two issues. So you're doing a pilot team who are distributed, and you're trying to teach them about Agile. How long have they been working together as a team?
I'd say for a few months. There's been a few people on the team that just came to the company. So
okay, that's what it sounded like. So you're dealing with teaching them about Agile, but then teaching them about each other, right? Building that team morale. And so I'm gonna give my perspective on the first thing. One, I also, if you haven't already, I would do one-on-ones with every single person on that team to get to know them, but also ask them about their Agile experience. Like, ask them, what is your experience with Agile? What do you know about Scrum Master? Have you ever had a Scrum Master? What do you know about product owner? So that way you're asking them one-on-one what their experience is, and you can kind of build somewhat of a program from that. But then in terms of actual somewhat of an Agile fundamentals for a distributed team, I'm going to defer to Josh for that, because Josh, his whole company, improving, that's what they do.
Got it.
Yeah, so for us, we don't, I think let's say it's more pragmatic for a conversation that we have with our clients than it is for what we do internally. Because I think internally with Agile, it's one of these things that we tend to do it pretty well. So we never have so many new people on a team that we can't acclimate them to the process. But I think the challenge is when we work with our teams, our client teams, especially right now, that what we've had, I tend to kind of make it so that they understand and so this is like a pointer t-shirt side message is what we like to use, is we sort of say to them that there's a calibration exercise that we do. And what we try to make them understand is we'll do a couple of sprints where we know they're going to fail. Like, we just know it's going to happen. But we do that so they can learn through an iterative process of what's going on, because once we're on the clock, The client will say, hey, we're spending money. What are we spending money on? And then what we do is we adjust our tooling of what we need and what the capacity of people have in contrast with the work and the project scope that gets to get done. And so what happens, Prez, over time is that we start identifying really quickly what their capacity is to do the work. And then we start appropriately managing what that is. Because let's be fair, like not everybody is comfortable with Agile. Everybody does something Agile a little bit different. The whole point is at the end of the day is to make sure that you're flowing work and not batching work, right? So if I can get tiny little wins on flowing the work or having them parallel work streams, that's success to us. But this is where metrics come into play. And this is why I talk about metrics a lot. Because as you gain velocity with an Agile system, your metrics should belie that that velocity is happening. So in other words, you should see more people taking on ownership of larger size work or more complexity. In addition to if there's things in the backlog that are approved but not taken, people will be able to fish those out and do those things. But I think the key component is you're going to have to calibrate at some point what your resources can and can't do. And failure should be part of it and should be planned in the process. I've never been on an Agile team where they've been introduced to it before, where there's not some friction. But if you understand where you need to go and you have your plan of what the end product is for that team, that will help you in that benchmarking to get there. It doesn't have to be like adversarial either, but it definitely, you definitely should start by doing it, because the exercise isn't gonna, nothing's on the line with a paper airplane. And I'm not trying to be facetious. It's just, you gotta have some, they have to have some skin in the game. Because I've always had, at least on one team, especially where we go, if we're doing change management, where we're putting in a new application or new system, and this is going to adversarially affect somebody's job unless they learn how to do it, we want to get them buy-in early. So when they feel that friction, we want them to be able to explain that friction is learning, not necessarily a negative.
Yeah, and actually, I want to second that. I thought I was being too narrow-minded, but I wouldn't have played. Playing a game sounds cool, but I would actually just do it. And if you want to teach them about Agile, I would just go through an Agile a Scrum presentation of what are the ceremonies and why are they important.
Fail
and
fast,
start
though.
from there.
Fail fast, Prez. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole point. Fail fast, and it can be fun. It doesn't. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to put all your chips in the table day one, but make it real for them is what I would say. Once you do go through the exploratory stuff, once you do show them what each one of these roles and responsibility is, it's just like working out. There's no better way to get into it than doing it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Skip the fluff, trial by fire.
Yeah, and then
but not adversarial, Prez. Like what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, Katrina, to cut you off, but trial by fire is just meaning it's like training wheels. Let's do it. Let's not put in a ton of stories. Let's put in something small. And you will gain velocity, because you got to learn what your people can do. Again, if they're all brand new to it, they've all been developers. Now it's a different type of accountability, but it's still working. So don't let it fool you, Matt. That's my practical experience.
Yeah, and that's why I say just starting off, if you're trying to teach them about Agile, just do a 1 hour, I don't know, this is what I do, a 1 hour session over, what is your elevator speech of Agile? Why are we doing Scrum versus Kanban? Tell them about the ceremonies are, but also those one-on-ones are also really valuable too, to get what their individual knowledge is. And also it builds rapport between you and them, because you're setting the tone for everything else.
They got to trust you. If they don't trust you, they're not going to buy into it.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome. All right. And Jacob, saving the best for last. Jacob, you've been very helpful throughout the chat, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Well, I just had a quick question about specifically your company's C-Vent.
Okay.
I saw that a majority of the positions were all over the world, which is really cool. And they are all labeled as remote. So I kind of wanted to hear like your elevator pitch, kind of like what were the changes between being in person as a Scrum Master versus the difficulties of having to go to a remote work lifestyle for that.
Okay, so I had a unique experience in that I was based out of DC, but my product line is actually based out of Dallas. We have one team in HQ. I have 2 teams in Dallas, 1 team in India. actually, and then I have a fifth team that's a quality team that they're actually all over the place. I was 75% of the people I work with was remote anyway, right? I was telling Josh, I was driving 45 minutes into the office to go into a conference room. No, to try to get into a conference room to have a remote meeting. And actually often the times, because, you know, people had different remote days, we already had remote days. It just, this blew it up into everyone having remote days all at the same time. So we already had remote days. So even my teams that shared the same corridor with me, we were slacking each other mostly throughout the day because we were on conferences, someone else somewhere else in the building or working from home. So that's the context, I will say. Kind of some of the, and CVent already had work from home days. Mostly a lot of people worked on Friday, on Fridays worked from home. So us having everybody working from home was not really a big shift for CVent. I can't speak for everyone, but for CVent. Now, in terms of the things that work really well, as a Scrum Master, I love it because nobody's late for meetings. And if they are, it's because they are either being difficult or because they have another meeting, right? But in the office, because we had teams and people all over the place, people were late all the time, trying to get in a conference room, trying to get out of conference room, traffic, all these kinds of events. I don't deal with that now. Also, when we were in the office, some people would be on video and I couldn't see their face because they were in a group of people in a conference room, whereas I can see everybody's faces, at least when we're on video. But even so, even on video, I don't care. But on video, I can see their faces, and so I always like that. The pros, also things that people don't really talk about as much, is, you know, some people don't feel as comfortable with their appearance, and it can make them be uncomfortable at work. So being remote, that kind of helps work that out a little bit. And specifically people that might have a physical disability or something that they're not comfortable with, they might actually prefer. I knew someone who I used to work with was, I want to say she was in a wheelchair. I didn't know that. I met her when we were already in remote world, so I didn't know she was in a wheelchair. But so for her, she felt more comfortable working remote. That was just something that, you know, people weren't distracted by. And I can't speak for men, but for women, that we deal with that a lot, right? Makeup, hair, not wearing the same thing the same day or the same week or the same month, right? Shoes, dress, all this kind of stuff that we don't actually have to deal with as much anymore now. And then of course, the pro is people can't have a work-life harmony now, right? I was telling Josh again, I used to buy 2 sets of groceries, one for work, one for home. And y'all, I joke about this. I like to poop in my own toilet. There were some times where I had to, you go in a group bathroom, come on. People laugh about this, but seriously, I can go to the bathroom. Nobody needs to know where I'm at. I love it. But some difficult things that we have on the other side that has been the most difficult, that we already had before, but not as much, is of course the infrastructure. People's homes' internet has not been as great as it is in the office. And we see that more in other countries where people are dealing with monsoons and tornadoes and hurricanes and power outages. That those things always happened, but now with the infrastructure of residential versus commercial are more prominent. We also have people that might have hearing or visual disabilities, and it can be very difficult working in this environment with Zoom, where somebody might not be able to hear or see everything, which is why I like the option to have subtitles if it's working, is because it helps with accessibility. So there's pros and cons. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was great. I really appreciate it.
The infrastructure is hands down the #1 thing that the problem that we have versus of working in the office. It was always there, but the residential is just not built as strong as the commercial opportunities are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jacob. Thank you everybody for being here and for being 2 hours plus with us. I am always available for additional questions, concerns. Again, I have experience as a product owner as well. Happy to answer questions. Email me about that. It's just my niche, and the thing that I really love is Scrum Master.